we knew there was one thing that we did not want to do in Vancouver. And as luck would have it, it's the very first thing we did.
You are listening to Travel FOMO, a podcast for people self-diagnosed with Wanderlust.
Welcome to the Travel FOMO podcast. We are moving through season 9, where we are sharing our RV adventures with you as we go through North America. My name is Jamin Houghton, and with me is my fellow full-time RVer, Hillary.
That's right. And it was, oh my gosh, we have just been I feel like I've been tripping over myself through RV life as we relive these stories. I'm like, that was hard.
It was definitely a learning curve and definitely not what I think we expected.
Yeah.
There are great things about it.
Yes.
But there are also a lot of challenges and work that come with it too.
Yeah.
And I think it was just took us by surprise a little bit.
Yep. We didn't have a lot of opportunity to test drive our scenario. Right. So we were learning along the way, but you live, you learn. So you got to do it.
Yeah. And I do think it would have been different if we had bought RVs like normal people and took it out for a long weekend and then a couple week vacation and we're in and out of it.
Yeah.
But we just dove right in and are this is every day now.
It was submerging yourself in ice water.
Yeah.
Where you're this is okay. Wow. This is a lot all at once. For sure. But let us set the scene for you for this episode. Like we said, we're new to RV life. We've so far in this season, since we've started the full-time RVing that we've been telling you about, we have gone to Grand Tetons and Glacier National Park. In this episode, we're actually traveling from Banff and Jasper National Parks in Canada. And so you can go back. I just say that so you have the opportunity to go back and listen to some of those previous episodes because they might be of interest to you, because we did adore those places for sure.
Yeah, very cool places.
Yeah, for sure. And in this episode, this is our first time that we were ever RVing in a city. So you have that to look forward to.
Yeah, it was. We had everything up to now had always been about parks, national parks and just staying and being out. And so we wanted to explore cities as well because we love doing that. And so we were headed to Vancouver. But before we got there, we actually had to stay a night in between Banff and Vancouver. And so this was our first time to not, be okay, we're going to go from RV park to RV park, basically, and we're going to try something out called Harvest Host. Now, for those of you who don't know, Harvest Host is a program that you can buy into. It's like a yearly subscription. I think it costs us $80 or something like that. And what it does is it sets up one night stays basically at different businesses. So it might be a brewery or a golf course or some kind of restaurant or something like that has space at their facility for you to park overnight.
Yeah. And
kind of the deal is that you partake in whatever it is that they do there. So you buy some of their goods or, participate in what they have going on, and they let you stay. And it's basically just a place to park because they don't have electric hookups or things like that for you to use. They don't have facilities, so there's no showers or bathrooms or anything like that. So your rig has to be fully self-contained, meaning you have to have your own bathroom and stuff like that on board. So if you are just tent camping or something like that, you can't use Harvest Host. This is strictly for vans and RVs and stuff like that. And it really is a great program, I think, for a lot of people. And this was our first time to kind of experience it. And we stayed at North Yard Cider Company, and it's in Salmon Arm, Canada. And if you didn't know where Salmon Arm, Canada was, we didn't know either. And it's basically a little over halfway between Banff and Vancouver.
If that helps you out at
all. Yeah, so way up in the middle of nowhere in Canada. But the North Yard Cider Company was actually a really cool little cider brewery. They had an apple orchard. Yeah. That's where they had us park, was right outside their apple orchard, which was really kind of cool. And, they were super nice. They had lots of interesting ciders for us to try. I think I would have enjoyed staying there a lot if it had not been like 97 degrees, like
oh my gosh,
legitimately mid 90s, high 90s in the middle of Canada, which I was not prepared for.
Yeah, we totally did not see that coming. I totally underestimated how hot it would be in Canada in the middle of the summer. I just assumed it would be cooler. It was pretty hot.
I did too. And you know, one of the things about using Harvest Host is that you need to arrive when they're open, right? Like, so you have to get there before they close for the day, which wasn't a problem for us with this. You know, we were going to arrive mid-afternoon and like have some cider and stuff like that and hang out for the evening and then leave first thing the next morning. And that's what we did. But in my mind, we were going to like have some cider and sit outside the rig and just enjoy a peaceful evening. And instead we just sweat.
Oh my gosh. We like literally were hiding behind the rig so that we could stay out of the sun.
Yeah.
We were like accommodating or, you know, trying to figure out all the ways we could accommodate ourselves to like get any cool breeze or any sort of shade. And then to make matters worse, right next to us was this Sprinter van with a generator going. And it was like, I was like, oh, and I just knew they were running an air conditioner in there. And I was like, it's brilliant if you want to invest in a generator.
Yeah, that's the thing for us. We didn't have a generator. And so no air conditioner.
Yeah.
We did have batteries to run like the lights in our rig and stuff like that, but that's all. Man, it was brutal. And I think Harvest Host is really good if you're kind of moving slowly and you've got plenty of time, but it's not something that we actually used nearly as much as I thought we were going to.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I think for us and just kind of our mode, when we have a long haul, we're like, let's just get as much of it done in a day as we can.
Yeah.
And maybe haul less the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And so Harvest Host just didn't make a lot of sense. We ended up at Cracker Barrel a lot.
We really did. You'll hear a lot about Cracker Barrel in the coming episodes.
But if you do have more time or you're not really wanting to travel that far in a day and you want to see some really unique things, Harvest Host is a good way to go and made for a nice little stop off for us on our way to Vancouver.
Yeah. I think it could have been really great if the weather had been a little nicer.
Yeah,
I think we
sure.
would have like loved it and you would have heard like a totally different review from us.
Right.
But yeah, that heat really got to us. We just didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I was not prepared for how hot it was going to be.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. So then that next morning we wake up, we drive out of the apple orchard, we head towards Vancouver. We've got, you know, a decent day of driving ahead of us. We had like one thing that we wanted to make sure we did not do that day.
Yeah.
And that was that when we arrived into Vancouver, we did not want to end up downtown with our Airstream.
Correct.
Because that would be devastating to drive on one-way streets downtown with an Airstream. And ours is a super wide Airstream. Like it's as wide as it gets, right?
Yeah.
For Airstreams, yeah. So, and we'd gotten very specific instructions from our RV park. We were staying on the Capilano Indian Reservation. It's on the north side of Vancouver. And so their instructions were do not get on Highway 99 because it will take you downtown. So don't do that. And we were like, okay, check. And of course, I'm the navigator, so I'm trying really hard to make sure that we follow these instructions. But that's exactly what we did. We got on Highway 99 and we headed right into downtown Vancouver and we could not get off. It was one of those things where there really wasn't enough. I just didn't know. You can't see on a map. You can look at a map and you can think you understand what's going to happen. But then whenever it's all plays out and you see the actual lanes in the road and how they come and go and how you're going to get on and you're going to get off. And I think we had to cross like 3 lanes in order to do what they wanted us to do. And it had to happen in a very short amount of time. And we've gotten Airstream that we're hauling. And clearly you can tell this has happened to a lot of people before. So, but before we knew it, we were driving across a bridge through Stanley Park and we're driving south now into downtown Vancouver. And it felt literally like one of the worst case scenarios that I could imagine.
Yeah.
What we were hauling. It was crazy. Tons of tight spaces, tons of traffic. In the process, we did hit some guy's mirror on his vehicle, and it was just chaos. And then we ended up making it back okay. But I'm just so curious your perspective, because that detour, it cost us like 30-45 minutes. It was a horrible start to city RVing experiences for us.
Yeah.
So,
well, we still hadn't had a lot of experience hauling the rig anyway.
True.
We're still only a few weeks in, and so you add driving in another country, which they still, in Canada, they drive very, very similar to what we do, but signs are a little different. Signage is a little different. Where you look for things is just a little bit different. And then being in a big city adds more to it. And then we're getting so close to our RV park. And like you said, you can't really see on a map because there are roads that, like service roads beside the highway, and a road that runs under the highway.
Yeah.
And we needed to be under the highway rather than on it. And you can't see that on a map really.
Right.
And so that made it really difficult to try to figure out. But then when you recognize, okay, we've missed our turn and now we're on this bridge, we're in traffic. And so we're having to slowly make our way across this bridge. And that like on the other side of the bridge is downtown, where it's just going to be worse.
Oh my gosh.
And so you just have to sit there and eat it and just be like, okay, here we go. And then, trying to like get around downtown and like pulling out into traffic. And I think this is where I really learned to embrace the, like, if I'm pulling a big rig and it's busy traffic and I pull out in front of you in your little Honda Civic, you can lay on your horn all you want. And I don't care. I just don't care. Like, I'm coming over, I'm making our way. There's just very little that you can do.
Yeah.
When you're pulling a trailer, there's just not a lot you can do. And so you just kind of have to be okay with people being upset at you. And then we had to go like through the park, and a lot of the park was
a little housing area.
Yeah.
I say little housing area. It was like a neighborhood with like apartments and super tight. Super tight.
Yeah. And the park, part of it was under construction. So you've got like cones and things like that up where we're literally just barely fitting through the barriers and things. And man, it was just such a beatdown. And it comes right at the point where you think, okay, like we're almost there. We're about to be done for the day. And we're just going to like pull into this place and find our parking spot and park the rig, and we'll be done. And then you're like, nope, you have another hour of this to go. And yeah, it was just such a sort of kind of beat down, really. And like you said, just not a great way to start and be introduced to a city, but yeah.
What advice would you give to somebody who's hauling a rig and they find themselves downtown and it is absolutely not what they wanted, but they just feel like it just happened and they did everything they could to prevent it. It happened. They're downtown. They're freaking out. What do you think RVers should do in those moments? What would you say?
Before we started RVing, we watched a lot of Keep Your Daydream with Mark and Trish, and they do a lot of like hauling, and they have a great YouTube channel if you're interested in RV stuff. And something that he says a lot is like, you've got nowhere to go and all day to get there.
Yeah.
And I think that if you can just in those moments, which it's really easy to say, really hard to do, but just kind of take a breath and realize like, I don't need to be in a hurry. I don't need to be in a rush. And I think it's hard to do, especially in a city, because everyone does think that they're in this hurry or this massive rush, or, because they've got to get their coffee or whatever. And I I think in those moments, you just have to be like, okay, I'm just going to take this slow, and I'm going to let everybody in their cars be upset. And like, when I pull out in front of them, like, they're going to be upset. And when I have to cut them off a little bit because there's no room in traffic, like, they're going to be upset. And they can get happy in the same pants they got mad in. And I'm just going along, because when you're pulling a trailer, you're just limited in what you can do.
It's just like people driving semis. It made me have a lot more empathy for people driving huge rigs, where you're like, they need time to slow down. They need space. There's just only so much they can do, and you've got to help them out.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And, yeah, so I think like just let all the like honks and like rude looks and flipping off, like, just kind of go and be like, that's fine. I'm in my RV and I'm probably going to have a better time tonight than you. So go be busy somewhere.
Yes. Okay. So did you have a better time than most people that night? Tell people what you thought of the RV park.
So I think this is when we really kind of started to figure out that like, it's really hard to see cities doing RV life.
Yeah.
I think originally we thought like we would kind of have this mix of, we'll be in national parks and that'll be great and awesome. And then we'll go like stay in big cities and get to experience cities. And I think we realized this was kind of the first taste of like, it's a lot harder to do. And one of the reasons is RV parks in or close to big cities are not like RV parks out in the country or in or close to national parks.
Yeah. And there's not many to choose from.
Yeah. Your options are very limited. They're full of all kinds of different people. Whereas like right outside a national park, everybody's probably getting up every day and going to that national park and hiking and sitting out by a campfire every night. RV parks close to a big city, you've got people that live there full time. Mm-hmm. And they're getting up and going to their jobs or like whatever. You have people that have really like set up camp, and you know, this particular RV park allowed tent camping. So there are people like full time in tents, and
I think, yeah, like literally living in tents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that also makes for all the facilities being a little rougher, higher use, like,
yeah.
People aren't there on vacation.
Yeah. And the rules seem a little less strict.
Right.
Where there's not as much like, that's what I kind of feel like I may have noticed with city RV parks, is that like they kind of need people to come in and they kind of loosen the rules a little bit. And then you've got like a lot of clotheslines and stuff with people's underwear hanging everywhere and like the whole deal,
Right. Well, and they like space is at a premium.
Oh, right.
So like spots are really tight. And that was definitely the case here. Like we were packed in there. Like, right. I feel like I could like reach from our RV and like touch the neighbor.
Almost. You can see in the video, if you guys actually go to YouTube and watch the video on Vancouver, you can see Jamin reaching his arms out and almost touching the other RV. That's how close we had to park to each other. It's crazy.
Yeah. And it makes getting into those spots hard and out of them. And so like, if you are coming there for a long time, that's not really that big a deal because it's just a one. But if you're only there for a couple of days, it's really a pain to like have to go through all that just to like set up for a couple of days. But it's a little rougher, and kind of that first clue to us that like seeing big cities while doing RV life is hard.
Well said. Well said. We had some other good experiences, but mostly the RVs in cities were pretty hard.
Yeah.
One of the things we did love in Vancouver, though, we only spent one full day, and our friend Lisa had recommended that we go hike Grouse Mountain. And they call it the Grouse Grind because it's a grind. And our friend Lisa, she's a Canadian transplant. Her and her husband, they can make stuff happen. They are athletic people, clearly far more athletic than me because this was so hard. But it was really a short drive from where we were staying. I mean, it was like 2 miles away. It was the steepest mountain I feel like I had done at that point. I think, though, we actually compared it to us hiking in Switzerland. And this was a gain of like 2,400 feet of elevation gain, 2 miles straight up. And the only one that was more steep than that was in Switzerland. We did the Harder Kulm in Interlaken. We did that hike, and it was the only one that compares. But oh my goodness. It was a really cool forest, though, to walk through, and it was a really well-marked path. There were lots of people there. It felt really safe, but no one was really having fun, I will say. It was really hard for people. It was crazy. I remember we ran into a guy from Austin, and he was doing great. He was just chatting away with his friends the entire time, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, yeah, because like my cousin Ashley, she lives in Austin, and she's like running all the time. Her and her husband Carl, they're just run all the time, and I feel like everyone in Austin is like really outdoorsy and athletic, and I was like, of course some guy from Austin is going to be able to just talk his way up the mountain. Gosh. But the real payoff, I think, is just the bragging rights that you get. You feel so accomplished after that. It was really rough.
It is one of those things that like it's just like ticking the box at the end of like, I did it, I survived. Because like you said, no one's enjoying it on the way up. You're not like seeing people being like, oh, good morning, isn't it a beautiful day? No, everyone's like, we're on like a 2-mile staircase in the woods.
Yeah.
And here we go.
It was intense. It was so intense. Yeah. There were stairs, there were stones, there were all kinds of things that you had to step up and navigate. But in fact, like, there's a sign, like you get like a quarter of the way up, I think, and there's a sign where they say, if you're having trouble, you need to turn around now. Because you cannot turn around after this point, but it's not going to get any better. Like, stop now is basically their advice.
Right.
And so at that point, you kind of have to really commit. And yeah, it was intense. Apparently, some people do it more than once a day. They do it like twice a day for like an extreme workout. And I thought it was extreme to begin with. So I'm super impressed by that. But once you get to the top, there is a view of the ocean and the city of Vancouver. There's actually quite a lot up there. There's a place where you can grab a bite to eat and you can get a beer. There's a gift shop. I actually bought myself a t-shirt to show that I had like accomplished the grouse grind. And you can buy like things like beaver tails, which is like a big thing in Canada. Which we had in Banff. I think we talked about it in the last podcast. And there's a grizzly habitat, which we did not go to, and I'm kind of regretting that. I think that could have been kind of cool.
Yeah, I think that probably would have been fun.
Yeah, but we got up there and there's like tons of kids. You can also hop on a gondola that will take you down, although it is like $20 to go down. But we summited in how long? I think it was like an hour and 40 minutes-ish, which, if I remember correctly, that is 10 minutes average, 10 minutes faster than average. So
look at us.
Very pleased with that.
We're just a little bit better than normal.
Oh my goodness. But the thing that did frustrate me a little bit, though, and we saw this in like Switzerland and other places, is that sometimes hiking can be like, there can be a real price tag on it. And that's so frustrating because I feel like it should be the one thing that like everyone can afford to do. Mm-hmm. In this instance, we spent $50 that morning because we had to pay $10 to park.
Yep.
And then we each rode the gondola back down because our legs were shot. And you can't go back down that path. We would have had to go down another path and didn't know how long that was going to take us. So then it was like $20 a person to ride down on the gondola. So I was like, it's kind of pricey.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of stuff in Vancouver was really pricey. Even the park. Like to get into the park,
Oh, I
you didn't have to
forgot.
pay an entrance fee to get in, but you have to pay to park anywhere in there.
Yeah.
So if you're getting out of your vehicle to enjoy any of the
Multiple
park at
times.
all, like you're
Yeah.
paying to park. In this place, you had to pay to park. Like there was a lot of that, I feel like, there where it's like, stuff that feels like should be free is not free here.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. But that day, after we nearly killed ourselves on the grouse grind, we went and got cleaned up because we definitely needed showers after that. And we went into downtown Vancouver, and we're really kind of excited to explore another city. You know, it had been a while, really, since we'd been in London that we'd gotten to explore a city.
Yeah,
You know,
that's right.
we've been in national parks for so long, and so we were excited to see a big city in Canada. And you know, it was something that we were like fired up about. And we started out in Chinatown, and we went to Chinatown barbecue and had lunch. It was okay.
Yeah.
And then like set out to explore the rest of downtown. We quickly made a wrong turn and stumbled upon like a tent city basically. And
No, it was rough. It was really sad.
I mean, it was really sad. Like the displaced people there were all kind of congregated in one area, and it was really rough.
Like a whole city block or two of just people living on the sidewalk.
Yeah. And we're essentially like, you have to walk in the street because the sidewalk is so full of people.
Yeah.
And as in, there's nowhere to walk on the sidewalk. And it was really rough. A lot of people, you know, just kind of out of their mind. Saw people doing drugs, like hard drugs. And
like,
it was
you
like,
saw somebody doing crack, didn't you?
yeah, he was smoking crack just out on the sidewalk, broad
like a couple
daylight
feet from us.
at 1:30 in the afternoon.
Oh, man.
And I was like, man, like this is crazy. Like
Yeah.
this is really rough. And
that was the one time I was like, I do not feel safe. Like, I don't exactly know. Like, I know it's daylight, but I don't exactly feel safe right here.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we walked to Gastown, which is kind of a historic district. There's some shopping and bars and stuff like that. And we stopped in one bar and had a drink and kind of saw that, walked into a few shops and things. We did Stanley Park, which is this really great park surrounded by the ocean. And like I said, we had to pay to park, and it's like, so you're kind of watching your clock because you're like, I paid for 30 minutes. So we got to see this in 30 minutes to get back to the truck and like drive to the next parking lot and pay again.
Yeah.
But there were some like cool things. There's a massive tree, like lots of really big trees, but one huge massive tree that they had actually, you could walk inside of, and they had put kind of supports in. We got some cool pictures of you there. There was a big section of the park where they had totem poles, which, you know, growing up in Oklahoma, living a long time in Texas, I always kind of think of like the Native American or that kind of indigenous people from the Oklahoma Plains perspective. And I don't really think about it a lot in Canada, and being like, oh, there's indigenous people that were there too, that have lived there a long time. And it was really interesting to kind of read a little bit about that, see the totem poles and see some of that history there, and just to be exposed to something that I didn't really know about and hadn't thought about before. And I really enjoyed kind of getting to see that part.
Yeah, and it then I started connecting all these dots too, because then you're like, oh yeah, like we're staying at the Capilano RV Park, and that's on the Capilano Indian Reservation. Like there was a lot of indigenous people influences everywhere you could see. So that's we especially noticed it with the totem poles.
It was really interesting, and I have to say, like, for me, Vancouver was like kind of a miss. Like I was really excited to explore the city, and you know, we did all the things that that people recommended, like we had gotten pretty good through our time in Europe of like looking online, figuring out what we like and being able to identify it and go into a city and be like, okay, we're going to spend a day in a city. We're going to see all these things. And we did all those things here, but I felt like none of them really stuck the landing so much with Vancouver.
We were having a hard time. We had a really hard time at the Harvest Host and had a real bad night there because it was so hot.
Yeah.
And then we arrived right into downtown and we were just like, we just wanted it over before it even begun. It was a little hard. Then we saw crack. Yeah. Somebody doing crack on the street. I mean, it was just a couple strikes that were pretty hard. But there were a couple things that we didn't get to do. We did most of the things that everybody, like you said, most of the things everybody recommends. If you happen to be there and you get more time there than we had, you would consider doing Vancouver Island because a lot of people do that. You could ferry over there, I believe. There's also the Richmond Night Market, which we were really interested in doing, but I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, it was on the completely other side of the city.
Yeah.
And it was going to be a real challenge because at some point we needed to get back to the RV and let Maggie out, and it was so hot we couldn't bring her and let her stay in the car.
Right.
So we were had a little bit of challenges with that. And then the third thing that I was really interested in doing, but we just didn't have enough time, was the Capilano Suspension Bridge, which was also really close to where we stayed. And when I look at pictures of it online, I'm like, oh, that looks pretty cool. I could see people enjoying that. But again, it also was pricey. So it was another thing I was like, I don't really know. I mean, yeah.
I feel like it could have been a different experience if we had flown into Vancouver and stayed in a hotel downtown or something like that. I do think that it was really kind of a shock at how difficult it is to see a city when you're RVing.
Yeah,
especially
and when you have a
with
big
a dog
truck like us.
Right. If you're RVing, you got to have something that can pull that RV.
Yeah.
Which means you have something that is more difficult to find a place to park. A lot of downtowns, the parking options are garages, and a lot of them don't play nicely with the height restriction of a full-size truck. And
I forgot about that. That's
so
right.
it's hard to park, and you're having to drive quite a distance to get into the city most of the time from an RV park. If you're like us and you have a pet, like you said, a lot of times it was too hot to bring her and leave her in the car, so she's staying in the RV in the air conditioning. Well, that means she can only stay in there for so long before you have to go back. And so it really does make exploring a city a lot more difficult than I think we had anticipated.
Yeah, and your RV park is never going to be downtown with you.
Right.
For the most part, it's always going to be outside downtown, which means you're hauling it back outside the city to go check on your dog. And
you can't do things too, like if you're staying downtown, I think if we had just planned a trip to Vancouver, we would have stayed in a hotel downtown.
Yeah.
Which means we could have gone out to dinner and had a glass of wine at dinner and then a nightcap somewhere afterward.
We probably would have loved it.
Right.
We would have gone for a run all around Stanley Park.
Yeah, you're walking around and doing that kind of stuff. But if you're having to drive at the end of the night, then you're also like, well, now I'm limited again in the things I can do. And so it just doesn't play as well.
Yeah. Things we were learning. We learned a lot of things along the way. I feel like this episode was a little ho-hum. I'm like, wah, wah.
Much like Vancouver.
But, it's just one of those things. I just feel like we talked about this before we started kind of writing out this episode and putting our thoughts down, and we really wanted to be honest. And this is actually a part where if you go and if you're watching the videos on YouTube, you'll see our tone change a little bit because we start really being honest. like pretty transparent once we started RVing. We had gotten a little bit more comfortable sharing our story, and we didn't feel like we always had to be upbeat. And so, you know, I'm wearing a lot less makeup and a little crankier. But I do think it's helpful for people to see the good and the bad, and that helps other people make good decisions. And like, it's just information that they can use. And other people out there are going to listen to this podcast, they're going to watch the video, and they're going to think of all the ways they would do it differently, or they're going to think about how the things that mattered to us might not matter to them. And that's great. But this is just another perspective that people can take with them and use as food for thought. So,
yeah. Well, like Hillary mentioned, there is a video out there on YouTube that kind of corresponds with this. So we kind of walk you through a few different things on that. You can go check that out on our YouTube channel. Like and comment the video if you enjoyed it. Maybe tell us what we should have done differently or could have done differently, or what you liked or didn't like about it. You can also find us on all the social media platforms. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. We post things from our current day from time to time, but then also stuff that goes along with the episode that is currently out there. So you can see some Vancouver stuff from our time there. And we would love to connect with you that way. Follow us there, reach out to us there. We try to get back to anybody that reaches out to us. So that's a good way to see what we're up to.
That's right. And you guys just enjoy wherever your next trip might be, whether you're doing it by RV or you're going to fly into downtown Vancouver and do it a little differently. Just enjoy it because life is short.
Wonder well.